Thank you for listening to 10,000 Stories to Sleep 2, your one-stop channel for a variety of short stories. If you feel up to it, subscribe to the channel for daily uploads so you never miss a new story. Enjoy. Years had passed since Lucy Caldwell had disappeared from Henry Kroll's house. The story of her vanishing had faded into local legend, a cautionary tale for children about the dangers of curiosity and the unknown. Eldridge had moved on, but whispers about the house on the hill lingered like the ever-present mist. One crisp autumn afternoon, a young historian named Clara Matthews arrived in Eldridge, drawn by the stories of Henry Kroll and the mystery of his disappearance. She was a scholar of the macabre, fascinated by the intersection of folklore and reality. Her curiosity had led her to seek out the truth behind the legends, and she was determined to uncover it, even if it meant confronting the dark history of the old house. Clara drove up the winding path to the house, its silhouette stark against the fading sunlight. The once foreboding structure now looked more like a relic, shrouded in layers of dust and neglect. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation as she approached the creaking front door. She knocked, but the door swung open with an eerie groan, as if inviting her in. Clara stepped inside, her flashlight piercing the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay, and her footsteps echoed in the empty silence. The interior was, as she had expected, cluttered with old books, strange artifacts, and faded photographs. The fire in the hearth had long since gone cold, and the shadows seemed to cling to the walls with an almost palpable energy. Clara began her investigation, methodically examining the room. As she flipped through a dusty ledger on a rickety table, she noticed that the entries were filled with cryptic notations and drawings of twisted, shadowy figures. It was clear that Henry had been obsessed with something far darker than mere folklore. A shiver ran down Clara's spine as she came across a journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Its cover was cracked and weathered, and the pages were filled with frantic scrawls about companions and the darkness that never leaves. The more she read, the more she understood that Henry had been consumed by a malevolent force, something that transcended mere superstition. Her flashlight flickered as she turned to leave, casting erratic beams that danced across the walls. The shadows seemed to grow, elongating and writhing as if disturbed by her presence. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, but her determination pushed her forward. She reached the hallway, but something stopped her, a soft whispering that seemed to come from all directions. The whispers grew louder, forming incoherent murmurs that were both enticing and terrifying. Clara followed the sound, driven by a mixture of fear and fascination. The whispers led her to a door she hadn't noticed before. It was partially hidden behind a tattered curtain and seemed to be almost seamlessly blended with the wall. With a deep breath, Clara opened it, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air grew colder as she descended. At the bottom, she found herself in a dimly lit chamber, its walls lined with mirrors. The mirrors were clouded and cracked, but Clara could still make out distorted reflections of herself. The room felt alive, the shadows in the mirrors moving independently of their surroundings. In the center of the room stood an old wooden chair, worn and ancient. Clara approached it, her flashlight revealing a chilling sight. Etched into the backrest were names, including Lucy Caldwell's. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized the names were not merely carved. They seemed to be written in a script that pulsed with a dark, almost liquid substance. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices, each one layered over the other. Clara could feel the temperature plummet, her breath visible in the freezing air. The mirrors began to darken, and the shadows took on a more tangible form, reaching out toward her. A cold, disembodied voice echoed through the chamber. "You have come to join the others." Panic surged through Clara. She turned to flee, but the door had vanished, replaced by a solid wall of shadows. The mirrors warped and twisted, reflecting nightmarish figures that closed in around her. As the darkness enveloped her, Clara's flashlight flickered out. She could hear the voices now, not just whispers, but full, resonant tones of the lost souls who had come before her. Their words mingled with the shadows, and she felt an icy grip tighten around her. With a final, desperate scream, Clara was pulled into the darkness, her form melding with the shadows. The chamber fell silent once more, the only sound the faintest echo of her scream, orating through the room. Back in Eldridge, the house remained as it always had, a grim monument to its dark past. The locals spoke of Clara Matthews in hushed, fearful tones. Her disappearance became another layer to the legend, a grim reminder of the fate that awaited those who ventured too close to the heart of darkness. The house on the hill stood silent and brooding, its shadows alive and ever hungry, waiting for the next curious soul to step across its threshold. The end.